Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer. So, what I got today was something you probably may or may not have seen already, but I got a list from a fellow player, somebody who's got a store, who's well dialed in with GW, speaks to them and gets information from them, certainly quicker than the average person. And I know that Anthony had posted this list up, so if anybody's also a subscriber to the Sustainable Center, you're probably seeing this list as well. So I'm going to go through it. I've gotten a bunch of other emails, so I've gotten some other stuff. Some of that stuff is in a different list form, but a lot of it is very consistent with this list. So it's not going to be drastically different. There's a lot of similarities. So I'm just going to go down the list and give you my opinions and my impressions. I don't have any pictures, so because it's just bullet form, and I don't want to take the time right now to go and put up a nice, cute little PowerPoint presentation. I'd rather put that into the next battle report. In any case, here we go. First of all, they say that there is no new rule book, that there won't be another big red rule book. And I've heard rumors to the contrary of this. I've heard that they will be releasing a rule book in a form of in some form, a larger book in, say, August or so. But that was the wording of that is a little different. It sounded like that could either be a compilation of the rules that we're which is the next bullet point, or that they'll be releasing, or it could be a new system with new rules. But there's conflict in that. What it looks like is that it's more likely the second and third and fourth bullets on this are true, and that is that there's not going to be a new big red rule book. That they're really not intending to make a new system. This is the system that they're playing, and what they're going to do is that's the second bullet. The third bullet says that all the models come with a scroll, which is its stats and its rules. Okay, this is consistent with what we've been hearing, that they would have a new layout of how to play each of the models and units that currently exist. What I've also been told is that we've heard this before, is that, and we've seen it actually before, is as they release new box sets, new units, new characters and whatnot, they're going to include stat lines and rule sheets with them. And that will be the over time, the ever evolving game, because new units and new characters and new monsters and new war machines, whatever, with their own stats and rules, can have a major impact on the game and how it's played. So that's what I think. That's why I think that the game is going to be is going to be a consistently evolving game, and we're not going to see a specific big red rule book with a compilation of all the rules that we go to. And it's one of the reasons why they probably won't need to do erratas, because if they have an issue with any kind of a simple rule set for a unit that may be overpowered, or they don't have to do a new version, a new system, I mean, because they could just release something that could either counter it or change up the way it's played, but they're just not going to care if something is overpowered or if there's new combinations that you can figure out. And if they need to counter it, they release something that has abilities to do so, which is something we've seen with other game systems. Okay, so all the scrolls will be downloadable for free on their site starting July 2nd. That's fantastic, and that is consistent with what I've been hearing across the board and with what other rumors have been out there. And a lot of people have been speculating about that. Oh, GW would never give away anything for free. Well, guess what? This is going to be for free, and that's great. That means that there's going to be all the compatible rules for all of the models currently and about to be released are going to be available, and they should be very simple. Here's the stat line for the models, and here's some blurbs on how you play it, what these units can do, and that's it. And then you're just going to have to compile a whole lot of this. Maybe that's what the real the real story is with whatever new rule book that will or will not come out. If there is one, maybe it's a collection of all this stuff, or maybe that's why they're never going to do it, because why bother when you could just download it. Why print it? Why spend the cost when you can download it and you can get it for free? So that makes a lot more sense. All current miniatures will be supported. They're producing scrolls for every single miniature they currently sell. Yeah, I think that's great. I was concerned about that. It makes sense with what they've been saying, that they're going to provide compatibility with everything that is out currently. And they're going to be releasing. They release stuff for things that are going to be released down the road and ongoing. And that's also in line with what they say, that you can play this all your existing stuff and all your old units with the new rule system. That makes sense. They're just going to have a conversion for everything that will be compatible in line with whatever rule set they have with Age of Sigmar. Now, could this mean that those units and those characters and all that stuff is eventually phased out because they'll just be left behind as new stuff is released with more and better rule sets? Possibly, and more probably likely. But that means that at least you're not completely ruled out with the entire collection that you have right now. So, and I'm going to mention how my feelings are when I finish this with everything, when I go through all these bullet points. Okay, new box set comes with 18 good guys and a hero, 29 chaos and a hero, dice ruler, 4-page booklet of rules, and a 96-page fluff book that sets the background. It's going to be $125 retail. All right, we know what the models look like. We've seen the pictures. I've got one of the pictures up right now of the Sigmarines, and I'm not going to go into more of the thoughts about what I think of the models. A lot of people have covered that, including myself, over the course of the last several days. I'm just going to mention that what I know about the 96 pages is that there's going to be lots of scenarios in the book, and so it's not just fluff. It's going to be missions, and lots of them, and this is a bullet point that's further on, so I'm not going to go too much in detail. So it's not just 4 pages of rules, which I think is very thin, but 4 pages of rules and many different ways to play the game that will probably also include rules. So I think it's a little bit misleading. It could be 4 basic sets of rules on how to measure dice, how to roll attacks, which again could be very short. And I'll make a point of that near the end of this video about other games that have had very short pamphlet-like rule systems that are extremely complex. Of course, different games types, but still, I don't think that it's just as simple as 4 pages of rules. I think that 96 is going to continue to include lots of different rule sets. So we'll get to more of details of that. That this is not going to be, quote unquote, next bullet is 9th edition. That this is the game. That there isn't another edition coming out, and I guess until there is. But that's what they're saying. That's what GW Games Workshop is saying. That there will be no 9th edition. This is the next game. Look, they can say whatever they want. When they want to release a new version or change things up, they can and they will. So for the time being, that's what they're saying. That this is the beginning of the new game. So we just have to wait and see what's in the game before we make any real judgments. Because even this long list of specifics, should they all be true, and they look pretty reliable, especially because I'm getting confirmed from literally 3 different sources who apparently don't know each other, and they're all almost identical. They've just been typed up in different ways. They're not concerned with this changeover of their Games Workshop, that is, because they feel that you're going to be able to use your armies and play however you want. Now, this is always the case. You could always take the entire line of Games Workshop and just made your own rule set, so that's kind of silly to make that comment. But what they've done is they've simplified the rules. They say the movement is very fluid. What does that mean? It could be something. It means that that the movement process is not going to include so many, incredibly diverse different sets of rules for different situations, that when you move, you get to move. You get to move in this direction, you get to move in any direction, you get to move this amount for this type of unit, you get to move this amount for that type of unit, and there aren't a lot of situational effects where you need to write rules or no rules in order to make those changes and adjustments. What that sounds like is it's just basically another skirmish game. What it could mean is that it could be very simplistic, but it could also mean that the game is so much faster and easier to understand, easier to play. You don't have to constantly go to try to interpret it, have different opinions, maybe even sometimes cause some conflict in the middle of a game because of different opinions. It could erase a lot of the misunderstandings of rules and the different play styles in different regions because people accept different rule systems and different rule interpretations, the need for FAQs. It could really streamline the game. Could it also make the game pretty simple? Could be, but it also could be that the game is it's like a poker thing. Simple to learn, hard to master. It could be that it's just a different way to play that's faster and easier. Maybe the game's not going to take 3, 4, 5 hours unless you play just a massive game. But it could be much quicker in play because of the much easier and streamlined rule set. We'll have to see. I don't know. Is it going to be a Baby Hammer? I don't know if it's going to be Baby Hammer. It could be that again that when we take all of the rules and we put them into one compilation, all the different stuff in one group, and we see what it all how it all shakes out with all the rules and the box sets and all the model sets and everything. We could be seeing a very diverse game, or a more diverse game than it seems to be on the surface. So let's not cast judgment until we've read it and maybe played it a few times. Okay. They've made comments once again that they're a miniature company and not a game company. Whatever. This is just their way of passing off the responsibility of the game system and saying we don't care, or it's not our concern. We're going to create a simplistic same game system, or whatever the game system is. That's the game system, and we're just here to produce miniatures and cool models that support that game. Look. If that's the way they look at it, it's unfortunate because they don't take ownership of it, and maybe it's too much of a headache and too much overhead to try and manage that. And you get a lot of feedback and negative, negative and positive. But you get a lot of blowback on the rule systems, and they probably just don't want to deal with it. They just want to they want to take that out of the equation in terms of the amount of space in their heads that they want to devote to what they do, and they just want to make here's the game system that we've produced, and here's the model line, and we're just going to keep producing whatever we're producing. And if you don't like it, well, then don't play it. And if you do like it, then you can alter it as you wish or play it in its whatever the incarnation is, whatever. That's fine. That's their decision. If we like it, we buy into it. If we don't, we move on. There's lots of other options out there. So that's certainly one possibility. All right. Next bullet. The rules. It's a turn-based system. You can roll off. You roll off before the beginning of each turn. There's magic rules, there's cards, but they're not going to be out yet, so there are probably going to be magic cards that are coming down. This is where it's discussed that they have scenarios in the 96-page rule book, but the idea is to encourage creating and playing as many different scenarios as possible. So it's still a dice-based game. It's not just, it's not a, it's not going to have, there was some rumors that maybe that we would be losing the dice structure and, find some different way of comparing, competing, and deciding, hits and damage and whatnot. That's not the case. But the fact is that I don't know if it's going to be an alternate turn thing where it's just a full here's my entire army, I go then you go, which is really what Warhammer currently is, or if it's going to be some kind of an alternating system similar to say like a bolt action activation system. I don't know. It could be something similar to a lot of the other game systems that we see where it's you can activate one of your units. But it could also be just, again, it could be consistent with historically the entire, you move you do your entire turn, and then the other person does their entire turn. We're just going to have to wait and see because it's kind of vague. When I hear it's a turn-based system, it doesn't say anything that it's been a radical change or anything very different. It could be just very consistent with what we've seen so far. But it is a turn-based system. But then the comment in this bullet point is bases are no longer important since the movement is fluid. They chose round because they look cooler, but you can keep playing with squares and movement trays. Now, we don't know exactly what this means. What we know what they are saying. They claim that squares don't matter. I'm believing that. I believe that squares won't matter because of a measuring system, because of some excuse me, some kind of a system where the comparison is not so much specific on what your base size is or your base configuration is, but just on distance. And that's very similar to, for instance, for other game systems that are out there. Almost any. And the first thing that comes to mind is when I think of bolt action, which basically does not have rules for what size base you have. You could have a machine gun team that could be on a small 40 mil base. A heavy machine gun team could be on a 50 mil base. Usually people have fairly good consistency with these things, but some people deviate because sometimes you'll have that same machine gun team that's on just a rectangular base, and that rectangular base is a completely different orientation where depending on the angle you might not be able to affect that model, or that model may not be able to affect you. There is no line of sight issues, so that could be an element that's going to be gone from the game. And I know a lot of people have commented that they like the idea of line of sight being limited, that you have a certain field of view where you can target or you can act upon. Maybe that's going to be removed from the game completely, where everything's 360, which is consistent with skirmish games. I've seen bolt action, for instance. I've modeled an L-shaped configuration for, say, a one machine gun team, one light machine gun team versus another one which was a round, just because the models were oriented differently, and the round would be, the guys with the legs would be hanging off the rounds. But the game doesn't matter. It's you measure from whatever your base is, whatever the closest point of your base is. Could this lead to abuse? I don't think people are going to put, a 60 mil under a light machine gun team. And if you decide that you want to put your tank on a oval or a round or a square, it's really up to you. The benefits you get are equivalent to the benefits that your opponent gets against you. So it makes sense to, you might not even have a base on some of these models. They, at least for, some of the World War II games. So it could be something along these lines for fantasy as well. If you have a monster, you get a base that roughly covers the area of the monster. I guess your the Terrorgeist massive base is he's not going to be relevant anymore. You can put that on a big oval base, and if you wanted to put your monsters, the old version dragons, for instance, that were on the little 40 mils, if you wanted to put them on 40s or 50s as opposed to the gigantic dragonish bases like the chariot bases or whatever else they come on or they have come on, you can do that too. So it sounds like the rules are going to be open enough that you can make the judgment yourself. Now the downside of that is that it could be a much more simplistic system in regard to line of sight, charging, those types of rules. The upside of that is that what we're looking at is a system where you don't have to go and rebase your entire army. And if you have even like one army like me, where I probably have like about 500 or 600 models. But what if you have like 5 or 6 armies or more, and you have anywhere from 200 to 400 models in each of those armies? That's a lot of stuff to consider rebasing, and I'm sure people would just not. That's one of the things that people said is, I'm not doing it. Well, now you don't even have to. You don't even have to make that decision. So if you at least for your models, whether you decide to stick with the hobby or you decide to unload, whether you decide to put everything up on auction sites and ditch and leave Warhammer, at least you know that there's still some compatibility with your stuff. It's not about what the size of about this configuration of the base is. It's just base it the most appropriate way for each model. I still don't know how I feel about it, but we're not going to know about this until we see the actual rules and how they pan out. It's not ideal, but at least I'm not going to be ripping up my rectangular and square bases or cutting off edges or sticking them as I was planning on. I was going to do a video about this. Now I can chuck that out the window about how to take your existing models and basically take a square peg and put it in a round hole. But we'll see. Maybe I'll still do it, but it just is not necessary. And I'm glad it isn't necessary, but we'll see. I'm sure somebody out there is going to find some way to, on millimeter wise, game the system and figure out advantages. But, either way, if the system is the way I think it's going to pan out, it won't matter. It really won't. All right, the fluff will be handled with the models as they come out. Tons of new things for all factions to be released. Okay, this is exactly what we thought. As new boxes come out, they're going to come out with, little pamphlets. They'll have the rules, they'll have the stats, they'll have, obviously the instructions and how to put them together, but they'll also come with a little background. Great. That's it's going to be this ongoing. You're not going to have one big rule book for everything and one army book for every army. It's just going to be this mishmash, and it's going to be a little chaotic. So chaos still won. Okay, no limited edition stuff. Okay, I like this one. This one makes me happy. But I don't know how, this is. It may not be true, but it sounds like it's going to be the case that if a model doesn't sell well, they will relegate it to direct sales on their website. So you need to special order it. But if a lot of people still don't buy them, they'll stop supporting it. They'll stop producing it. They'll discontinue it once their existing inventory is depleted. Okay, fine. I can accept that. That makes sense. That's a good business aspect. It's also business decision, but it makes sense in terms of the game. If people just aren't playing it, phase it out. It's not the kind of thing where it has to be a default. We're not going to have a system where people are going to have to buy those spearmen, have to buy the core guys if they suck. All the units are going to be, there's going to be either a use for the units or they're going to get phased out. And frankly, that's probably how war, planning and for war would happen in a true to life situation. It happens in the real world. If a unit is not effective, they phase it out. They repurpose it. They reorganize it. They give new skills. If they move those guys off into different factions and different units, if that doesn't work out. Now, it's not as simple as a board game or a tabletop game in doing so, but in effect, that's what happens. You modify, you adapt, or you die. So in this game, it makes sense that you'll play test some of these units, and if they just don't work, and if there's more cost-effective options, that's basically what's going to happen. You're going to pick the more cost-effective options. So there could be models that eventually you just decide that you don't need, and either they go into the garbage, they go on, they get relegated to some other system, or maybe you adjust them, you adapt them. You convert them, you proxy them. It depends, but there could be some of the mainstays of certain armies, that not the high powered units, but some of the bland units that we've had to use, they've had to include, that just don't make sense, in the overall game. We'll just have to see. I kind of like the idea of some kind of a core investment, just because then everything is an elite, but we'll have to see. I'm sure that as the game changes over time, we're going to see a use for a lot of different units that maybe we won't in the short term, because everybody's going to want their special best magical toys, and there might be a need and a use, and somebody out there is going to make a video of that includes, or come to a tournament that includes masses of something that you just didn't expect and be successful with it. The same reason why you had people who had multiple small units that were successful, and then the mass units were successful, depending on the change of the meta. This is going to be something that I think we're going to see over time. And so I don't necessarily believe that everything is going to be elite, but it probably will be in the early stages. The game is supposed to be fast and furious. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting that they've built a rule system that you can get stuff on the table and play in a quick game. Warhammer has been a long, sometimes boring game in the process of you wait a lot for the other person to do their thing before you do yours. And depending on how fun it is to play with who you're playing with, it can be great, or it can really suck. And if you have a game system that's a little bit more involved, it inspires people to actually participate more, and it doesn't just inspire it forces you to participate, and that can be a lot of fun. That's why I love the order system for bolt action so much, the order die system. So if it's supposed to be fast and furious, well, we'll have to see how fast and furious, but I like the idea of a quicker, faster play style. Okay, so no more armies per se. Instead, you build forces based on the category at the bottom of each battle scroll. Okay. This is very much in line with what we're seeing, where it's kind of a pantheon-driven game. But it may not be gods necessarily. It could be along the lines of, of just themes. Okay, so we have the Stormcast Eternals, which are the Sigmarines. Chaos, Magical Elves, Old Ones, Skaven Dark Forces, or whatever. You know what? I'm good with that. Undead, I'm good with that. You have a theme, and then there's different versions of that theme, and then you build according to that, and you have access to different types of units and forces within that. So that works for me. You're not going to have an army book, and the army book that is effectively created as a result is constantly evolving. They don't have to introduce new additions. They just introduce new models and new products. Okay. The fluff, the old world, they're just leaving it behind. It's gone. So what they're saying is that Sigmar saved a bunch of people from most of the races, and he discovers what's called, what apparently is 8 realms, and then he populates them. And then he sets up gateways to each. So there's ways to move about between them. It says here, he shoots them via lightning bolts onto the worlds. Okay, so they have some kind of a transport system, a magical transport system. Sounds a little bit high-tech to me, but hey, it can be explained by magic, sure. And then they work to stave off chaos. So chaos is still invading and converging and breaking through. So, you know what? Whatever it is, I'm fine. This is the shattered existence of the remnants of the old world, and they're finding some way in the ether to survive. Fine, I'm with it. We'll have to see what this new world looks like on the table. They've discontinued a lot of models. They've discontinued a lot, not models, excuse me, a lot of terrain, and they're going to be introducing new terrain. I've heard that one also from a different source that's not in this list, that in the first week there's going to be a ton of new terrain that's going to come out. So great. That I'm looking forward to as well. So we'll have to see how that falls, but it could be a whole different look and theme for the game. Let's see, what's the next one? They want to be able to sell new models to new people who want to get them, but they don't want people. They don't want to try and inhibit people who, for instance, don't want to have to buy like 200 or 300 models at the outset. So they want to introduce a style of play where you could have 20, 30, 40, 50 models on the table in your initial outset. And if you wanted to ramp up to hundreds of models, you can, which is fine. I mean, it sounds like it's a scalable game, which is good. It may not be a scalable game in the way that I envision, but I can see what they mean. It's just more and bigger. Let's see. Next bullet. They understand that the scene will now have folks who play with lots of models and people who play with a few. Okay, that's the same thing we just said. It seems that they're going that first to be supported will be elves, chaos, and human stuff. There's for certain new elven stuff, so they're going to be adjusting. I imagine that elven redesign will probably be as radical as what we've seen with the Sigmarites, but we're going to see more stuff and new stuff for the humans as well, because the Sigmarines were a pretty radical departure from the design of the game. Now we have those, but those probably won't be the only thing. We'll probably see guys who are not in the big bulky Space Marine type armor. Next one, all new scenery. Okay, so this includes that, and tiles for battle boards. The look of this game is going to be different. It's not going to look like old, medieval Europe, or Lustria with the jungles and the pyramids with the Tomb Kings. It's going to be a completely different type of setting. So I expect this to look like Alien Worlds. I really do. I think it's going to be like Alien Worlds that have been adapted to fit the armies, the races from where they came from. So they'll have like adjustments in their architecture to fit their style and their preference from their history, but it's going to be adjusted to fit with a alien civil. It's much akin to if we found, an oxygen-rich planet somewhere within reach that we could travel to with today's technology, and we moved our habitation off to that in the real world. We would build stuff that would fit that environment, but still have some of the architecture that suits our our body type and our style and our preference. But it won't be like the old brick and mortar from hundreds of years ago in castle structure and old Europe or whatever the themes were in different areas of the world in with different countries and their background history as they've evolved with technology and architecture and materials. It will be, hey, we moved everything to this new place, and we'll keep our style and maybe keep some traditions, but we're also going to be practical. So it might be uniform to those races, but it's going to be it's going to have a different feel. I don't think we're going to be able to take some of the old style castles and whatnot and just plop them down. They're going to be looking different. Are we going to do that? Sure. If you have a lot of investment in terrain, you use what you've got. But I think there's going to be some major major differences and some new stuff. So maybe there's new stuff that can populate the terrain with new abilities that can hamper the game as well. I like that. Next one. All right, so it's a totally different game. It's really not Warhammer Fantasy. It's not 9th edition. Okay, so we have a 4-page rule book that's going to be enhanced by the scenarios in the 96-page supplement with fluff. They're going to be releasing new stuff with like campaigns and new fluff books, so you can get more details about each of the individual scrolls and race themes. But the game it's about how the players can play the way they want versus this is just there's just one rule set and then it's never going to be able to evolve. So I guess you can, it makes it easy to comp if you want. It makes it easy because there's going to be less diversity in the rules. It's easy to comp, units out if you want to, I guess. So that's going to be a thing. But these are guidelines. They were always guidelines, guys. I know that people like to use these books as if they're holy religious artifacts and try to interpret them like the Talmudic researchers of old. But you know what? We can take what we want and leave. It's like the facts of life. All right. You know what? I wish I could edit that out, but I'm not going to. Even so, I'm moving on. That sounded pretty ridiculous. Anyway, fantasy. The way we've known it, yes, it is dead. It's gone. And this is a new game. It gives us flexibility. We can write our own versions of our game. That's what they're saying. You know what? I'm fine with that. If you want to do a narrative game, which is the kind of thing that Materium loves. I'm sure that Materium is going to hate this. I know I've already seen some of his comments, and that's unfortunate. I hope that people like him give it a chance because I could see him just absolutely going crazy with this and doing some great writing and such. But you know what? There's a lot that can be done with this, and I think if you buy into it, realizing you haven't lost anything, you could still play 8th the way it was if you want. But if you want to use your models with this new system and jump into it, you certainly can. This is apparently where the direction of this game is going, and I'm good with it. I'd have to play it before I really make a good judgment. I really feel that the 4-page rules are not a major detraction, and here's why. Now I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to give you my final thoughts about this. Honestly, guys. When I picked up X-Wing, and I know it's a different game, and you're talking about different volume of models and different types of movement and whatnot, but I was surprised at how short that pamphlet was for rules. It was less than 4 pages. It was probably like, it was probably like 3 or 4 pages, but I'm talking about both sides. And it just didn't require that much brain power to understand what was going on with the rules. They were very well written, probably about as concise and perfect for that game system as possible. Now 4 seems to be a little bit small for this kind of a game, of course, because we're used to, a 100-page rule book, a 3-inch, massive big red rule book. But when you think of the fact that a lot of the ways to play are also in that 96-page fluff book with all the different scenarios, and there's many more scenarios than we've seen, then we have to realize that that's not all of the rules. They really are probably just going over, this is what you do to move, this is what you do to attack, this is what you do to shoot, and that's it. And then the specifics of all of the rules, the little pieces that might be put into one volume are all going to be diffused, not just amongst all those scenarios in the 96-page additional book, but also within the actual units that with the PDFs and units and models and monsters and war machines and whatever that come out ongoing. So it's an ongoing rule book, and it's a rule book that is spread over the course of many different sources. That 4-page is not the whole complete volume. So that's what I feel about it. I'm going to remain optimistic. I was going to do a big Don't Panic video with the Don't Panic logo that I did last time when End Times came out and people were freaking out about that. But that's already been done. You beat me to it, Skaven and AZ. But then, this came out, and I figured I'd just do my opinion video. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this, and there's probably more to it. There's probably other stuff that I haven't included, that I haven't gotten from this main source and from other peripheral sources that I have. But a lot of this is, there's like 20 or 25 bullets here. A lot of this is consistent. We're seeing it across many different avenues, and I think this is where Warhammer is going to go. So, try to hold back before you dump everything on eBay or Bartertown or whatever, or you ditch it, go to the bazaars and try to unload it for, maybe 50 cents on the dollar that you spent on it, or even less. You never know. There could be some value in keeping it, even if you don't want to play this game, because people who want to play it are going to want to find this stuff, and you're just going to be selling with the masses out there that might be doing the same thing, which means you're just not going to get the regular value. If you're really going to look to unload, you might, I don't know if I had 3 or 4 armies that I just was no longer interested in playing, at this point I would hold off a little bit just to see, because once the uncertainty is removed, people who do want to play or are looking to get into it are going to look for values, and that's just going to either at least steady the, it'll maintain the value, or at least you'll recover more of the value than if you just dump when there's a lot of question marks out there. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I'm not an economics or marketing guru, so do whatever you feel is right. But I personally am going to hold on hope, and see what new stuff is released with the PDFs, and I'm going to absorb whatever rules there are, and I'm going to try and play test it, and I'll do some videos on it. So look out here, look out for certainly other people that are going to be doing the same, and we'll get a better picture, I'm sure, within the next week or two. Have a great day, everybody.